Right now, there is a country where every single citizen is, on paper, close to being a millionaire. Not the politicians, not the oil executives. Everyone. Every nurse, every teacher, every newborn baby comes into the world already owning a slice of a $2 trillion fortune. That country is Norway, a nation of 5.5 million people that somehow ended up owning a piece of almost every major company on planet Earth. And here is the part nobody tells you. None of it was supposed to happen. The country's own experts had officially declared, in writing, that there was nothing of value under their sea. The government came within a signature of handing the entire seabed to one American company for pocket change. And the discovery that changed everything was made by a crew that had already given up, drilling one final well they didn't even want to drill, purely because the contract said they had to. This is the story of how Norway accidentally got so rich. It's a story about luck, outrageous, ridiculous luck. But the ending is about something else entirely. Because the real genius wasn't finding the treasure. It was what they did the morning after. Let's rewind to the 1950s and forget everything you know about rich, modern Norway. Back then, this was a quiet, rainy corner of Europe living off fish, timber, and cargo ships. Hardworking? Absolutely. Stable? Sure. But wealthy? Not even close. Norway was one of the poorer corners of Western Europe. So poor, in fact, that for a century Norwegians had been leaving. Around 800,000 of them had emigrated to America, chasing better lives. Nobody was moving the other way. And when it came to oil, the official position was crystal clear. In February 1958, the Geological Survey of Norway sent a letter to the Foreign Ministry containing one of the most spectacularly wrong sentences ever written. It said, "One can disregard the possibility of coal, oil, or sulfur on the continental shelf along the Norwegian coast. Disregard the possibility." The country's own geologists had officially declared the seabed worthless, and honestly, nobody argued. Norway was a nation of fishermen, not oilmen. Case closed. Then, 1 year later, everything changed, and not even in Norway. In 1959, engineers discovered a colossal natural gas field under Groningen in the Netherlands, one of the largest gas fields on Earth. Suddenly, geologists across Europe stared at the map of the North Sea and asked a very uncomfortable question. If there is that much gas on the edge of this sea, what is underneath the middle of it? American oil companies asked that question fastest. In the autumn of 1962, Phillips Petroleum, an oil giant from Bartlesville, Oklahoma, sent an application to the Norwegian government. The offer: give us exclusive rights to explore the Norwegian shelf, and in return, we will fund a seismic survey worth $1 million. Read that again. One company, the entire seabed, locked up for the price of a survey. A small country with zero oil experience could easily have said yes. It was free money for empty water the experts had called worthless. But Norwegian officials did something that looks like pure genius in hindsight, and was really just stubborn caution. They said no. If this seabed was worth exploring, it was worth more than one buyer. There would be no monopoly. Norway would set the rules, and the companies would compete. Then, before selling anything, Norway made two quiet legal moves that turned out to be worth trillions. In 1963, it formally claimed sovereignty over its continental shelf. And in 1965, it signed boundary agreements. It signed boundary agreements with Britain and Denmark, splitting the North Sea along the median line. Simple geometry. Every country keeps what is closest to its own coast. Nobody fought very hard over those lines. Why would they? Half of Europe still believed the sea was empty. But that quiet paperwork would decide which flag flew over one of the biggest treasure chests on Earth. Because the field that changed everything sits just inside Norway's side of the line with Denmark. A border drawn across water everyone thought was worthless turned out to be the most valuable line ever drawn with a ruler. That same year, Norway held its first licensing round, and the drilling began. Foreign rigs punched hole after hole into the North Sea floor and found nothing. The very first exploration well went down in the summer of 1966 and came up with nothing worth pumping. The companies kept trying. Esso, Shell, Phillips, burning millions of dollars per hole in some of the roughest waters on the planet. Well after well came up dry or hit traces too small to matter. Across the shelf, more than 30 wells, 4 years of storms, blown budgets, and disappointment. The North Sea was starting to look exactly like what the 1958 letter had promised: empty. By the summer of 1969, Phillips executives back in Oklahoma had seen enough. The North Sea adventure was over. They wanted out. But there was one problem: the license. Phillips still owed Norway one more exploration well. The company even tried to hand the obligation over to other oil firms. Nobody wanted it. That is how little faith was left. They could not even give the future jackpot away for free. And since Phillips was already paying the daily charter rate for the drilling rig Ocean Viking, whether it worked or not, the order finally came down from headquarters with all the enthusiasm of a man paying a parking fine. Fine, drill the last well. Get it over with. And then bring the rig home. That well was called 242. Autumn gales hammered the rig. The crew fought brutal weather and a gas scare that forced them to abandon the first hole and start over. And then, on October 25, 1969, the drill bit sank into something the experts had sworn did not exist: oil. A lot of oil. They tested and retested and moved the rig and drilled again, and the numbers kept getting bigger. This was not a puddle. This was an ocean under the ocean, trapped in a layer of chalk nobody believed could hold oil. Just before Christmas 1969, Phillips called the Norwegian authorities with what might be the most valuable phone call in the country's history. "We found it." The field was named Ekofisk, and it turned out to be one of the largest offshore oil fields ever discovered anywhere on Earth. By some counts, more than 3 billion barrels of recoverable oil. And more than 50 years later, the area is still producing. Billions of barrels, sitting under the exact patch of sea the geologists had written off, inside a border nobody had fought for. Found by the last well nobody had wanted to drill. A nation of fishermen had just become an oil nation. On June 15, 1971, the first crude came up from the seabed. And that is exactly when the real danger began. Because here is what usually happens when a small country strikes oil: it gets poorer. Economists literally call it the resource curse. Money floods in, the currency balloons, every other industry suffocates and dies, politicians spend like the party can never end, and when oil prices crash, the country is left broke, corrupt, and hollowed out. There is even a medical name for it: Dutch disease, named after what that same Groningen gas bonanza did to the Netherlands' own economy in the 60s. And the ultimate warning is Venezuela. It sits on the largest proven oil reserves on the planet, bigger than Saudi Arabia's, and yet oil helped drag it into poverty, blackouts, and collapse. Children were growing up hungry in the country with the biggest oil reserves on Earth. That is how hard the curse can hit. Statistically speaking, striking oil is one of the worst things that can happen to a small country. The jackpot is a trap. And Norway? Norway started walking straight into it. Through the 70s, the government borrowed heavily and spent against oil money it had not even earned yet. Then came the 1986 oil price crash, and suddenly the national budget had a crater in it. Norway got a small, painful preview of the curse. And unlike almost every other country in history, it actually learned the lesson. Even before the money got truly big, Norwegian politicians did something remarkable. They wrote rules to protect the country from themselves. In 1971, Parliament agreed on what became known as the 10 Oil Commandments, founding principles declaring that the oil under the sea belonged to the Norwegian people. All of it. Forever. In 1972, they created a state oil company, Statoil, and demanded state participation in every single field. Then they taxed petroleum profits at 78%. The message to the foreign oil giants was simple. You are welcome to drill here, and you will still make good money, but the treasure under this sea belongs to the people living above it. And the companies grumbled and kept drilling anyway because the fields were just that good. Then came the masterpiece. In 1990, with billions piling up, Parliament created a national piggy bank, the Government Petroleum Fund. The idea was almost offensively simple. Do not spend the oil money, any of it. Pour every krone into the fund and invest all of it outside Norway in foreign stocks, bonds, and real estate, so the flood of cash could never drown the home economy. The first deposit landed in 1996, and in 2001 came the golden rule that still runs the country today. Each year, the government may spend only the fund's expected real return. First 4%, later cut to 3%, never ever the fund itself. The oil money would work forever, and Norway would live off the interest. Fast forward to today, and that boring little rule has produced something absurd. The fund, now called the Government Pension Fund Global, is worth over $2 trillion, making it the largest sovereign wealth fund on Earth. It owns roughly 1.5% of every listed company on the planet, spread across some 9,000 businesses. Apple, Microsoft, Nestle, Toyota. Odds are, a sliver of whatever is in your pocket right now technically belongs to Norwegian nurses and bus drivers. In 2025 alone, the fund earned $247 billion, more than the entire yearly economy of most countries on Earth. Split it up, and every one of Norway's 5.5 million citizens owns roughly $385,000 of it. Babies born in Oslo tonight are, on paper, wealthy before they take their first breath. And every single year, the fund quietly covers about a fifth of the entire national budget. Schools, hospitals, roads, pensions, while the fund itself keeps growing. And this pot of money even has a conscience. An ethics council can kick entire companies out of the fund for things like child labor and corruption. The lottery ticket became a money machine. The money machine became an inheritance for Norwegians who have not even been born yet. So, was it all just an accident? The luck is real. A hilariously wrong letter. A refused monopoly. A border drawn across worthless water. A last unwanted well. Move any single piece of that chain, and there is no Norwegian miracle. But here is the uncomfortable truth. Plenty of countries have won this exact same lottery and ended up with inflation, corruption, and collapse. Oil made Venezuela poorer. Gas made the Netherlands sick. The North Sea jackpot was pure chance. What Norway did with it was pure choice. They said no when yes was easy. They wrote rules against their own greed. They kept the treasure out of reach of their own politicians, and they spent only the interest, so the jackpot never ever runs out. And that is the real lesson hiding inside this story. It works whether you are running a country or a bank account. Getting money is luck. Keeping money is behavior. Norway did not get rich the day it found oil. It got rich the day it decided not to spend it. If you enjoyed this story, hit subscribe. There is a new deep dive into money, power, and economics every week. And tell me in the comments, if your country found $2 trillion tomorrow, would you trust it to save a single cent?